Hello guys, and welcome to another video. Now, Path of Exile's 3.26 expansion added a lot of new unique items to the game, many of which are exclusive drops from the new Atlas Pinnacle bosses. However, in this video I'm going to be covering a new unique that's an exclusive drop from the Mercenaries of Trarthus League mechanic. And this is a shield that can rarely be found equipped on a mercenary that you find in an area, and you can select this piece of gear as a reward for winning a duel against that mercenary. And this is Azadi Crest, which is a pure evasion unique shield. Now this item is kind of crazy considering that it has a modifier that introduces something we haven't seen before in Path of Exile, that being lucky and unlucky modifiers causing 3 rolls instead of 2. And that has some major implications for those modifiers and how powerful they can be. But before we get there, let's briefly go over the other modifiers on this shield. As you'll notice, they have ridiculously large roll ranges, and that's kind of the whole theme of this item. It's very much themed around RNG. So, 1 to 100 maximum life. These are common enough in softcore trade that you can buy one with a good roll, but on average you're getting about 50 life here if you find one or if you divine it, which is very underwhelming. But at a max roll of 100 or close to that, it's quite serviceable. Then there's some additional block chance. Now, I think most builds that utilise this item will likely be making use of the Gladiator Ascendancy due to the lucky block that exists on the more than skill notable. In fact, 84% of builds using this item in SC trade right now are Gladiators. In which case, the additional block roll here is meaningless because the node before more than skill provides a flat 50% chance to block from your equipped shield. However, if you're taking more than skill using Forbidden Flesh and Flame duels on another Duelist Ascendancy, or if you're simply using the shield on another class, once again, getting a good roll here should be fine in Trade League, but if you're in SSF, finding or divining the item, you'll average at an extra 5% block chance, which is, well, pretty average, nothing to write home about. Then there's a chance to avoid Projectiles modifier here, again with a roll of 1 to 10%. Now this one is actually quite powerful. Avoidance is split into 2 types, hit type avoidance and damage type avoidance. And even though they may seem very similar, they're calculated at different stages of the damage calculation. If a type of hit is avoided, then the hit never makes it into the damage calculation. It's completely discarded and is treated similarly to a hit being evaded. However, if a type of damage is avoided, this is instead a form of damage mitigation. The hit still takes place even though all of the damage is avoided, and this avoided damage is considered to be prevented damage, similar to blocking a hit. This modifier is that first type of avoidance. This will grant you a chance to entirely avoid a type of hit, that being any projectile that makes contact with your character, and this comes before block. If you avoid the projectile, it doesn't hit your character. You can obtain a further 10% chance to avoid projectiles on the Soul of Lunaris Pantheon, and up to 12% on Shaper Boots as a Shaper suffix modifier, or 20% while phasing on Voidwalker unique boots. And now we have the main modifier. Your lucky or unlucky effects use the best or worst from 3 rolls instead of 2. Okay, so lucky and unlucky mechanics work by rolling something twice and choosing the best outcome of the 2 for lucky rolls, or the worst outcome of the 2 for unlucky rolls. Lucky is already an incredibly strong mechanic to utilize for some mechanics. Take for example Lucky Block obtained from the Gladiator's more than skill notable. Let's say you make use of Versatile Combatant to fairly trivially cap both your attack and spell block each at 65%. With Lucky Block, the chance to block any incoming blockable attack or spell hit will be rolled twice, with the favourable outcome being chosen. So with 65% chance to block for each roll, this results in an effective 87.75% chance to block, and that's with a normal lucky roll. What happens when you equip Azadi Crest and your lucky roll now rolls 3 times instead of 2? Well, that effective chance to block improves again, from 87.75% to a ridiculous 95.71%. That means on a Gladiator with Azadi Crest and capped block at 65% for attacks and spells using Versatile Combatant, you'll have around 96% chance to block any incoming blockable hit as long as you've blocked in the last 4 seconds, which is ridiculously strong, especially for mapping. But Azadi Crest doesn't only apply this modifier to Lucky Block, it works for any lucky or unlucky effects that exist on your character. and one of the most notable is of course going to be lucky damage rolls, especially in a league where you can equip your mercenary with Perkle's Toe to obtain lucky damage. Now, lucky damage isn't all that useful unless you have a high damage roll range. Lightning damage skills typically have very large roll ranges with low minimum damage and high maximum damage, whilst an item such as Replica Alberon's Warpath will provide a naturally high damage range, as each increment of damage gained from strength stacking is 1 to 80. You can also force a larger range by utilising mechanics such as volatility support or Rizlatha's Coil on attack skills, and having a large roll range is where lucky damage really shines. So let's take a look at an example using Replica Alberon's Warpath. Now, because this item prevents non-chaos damage, it's often the case that these types of builds gain all or almost all of their flat damage from this item. So for this example, we're assuming that this is their only source of flat damage. So with a range of 1 to 80, an average roll will deal around 40 damage. If the range is rolled twice, the average damage improves to around 54 damage. This means that lucky damage is around an effective 33% more damage. Now, if Azadi Crest's modifier is taken into account, the damage range is rolled 3 times instead of 2, and this improves the average damage further to around 60. And this would mean that lucky damage with Azadi Crest's lucky modifier taken into account is around 50% more damage for these types of builds. That's crazy when you consider that some of the best weapon choices for these types of setups are one-handers like Paradoxica or Replica Frostbreath, which can fit a shield into the build, but that does notably limit skill options. You won't be able to use attacks like Dual Strike of Ambidexterity, for example. But this is pretty much the best case scenario for lucky damage, and as your roll range narrows, you'll be getting less and less of an effective damage boost. Now, I want to mention something here in regards to lucky damage that I think is really important to note, especially in regards to the current league. And this strongly relates to this item considering so many of the builds using it are gladiators. Lucky damage does not affect damaging ailments. This may seem counterintuitive, but it's essentially the same as double or triple damage not affecting damaging ailments. These are hit-only modifiers, and this is PoE 1 where the hit and the damaging ailment applied from the hit are 2 separate things that apply different modifiers to their outcomes. I expect there are a lot of gladiator builds right now with volatility and Rizlatha's Coil and a mercenary equipped with Perkle's Toe. Just a heads up, that lucky damage roll is not improving your bleed damage. Now with that said, let's get back to Azadi Crest for a moment in regards to lucky damage not affecting ailments. The Saboteur was changed a bit this patch, and it received a new notable, Calculated Risk. This makes your critical strike chance lucky and your damage with hits unlucky. This node is already very good for ailment builds using Perfect Agony. You can easily reach a good amount of crit chance with less investment due to the chance to crit being rolled twice. Meanwhile, you avoid the downside of unlucky damage since this doesn't apply to damaging ailments. So this has a lot of potential for Perfect Agony builds, poison especially considering the location on the tree. But with Azadi Crest you can double down on this, rolling your crit chance 3 times, which means you require even less investment into crit scaling, so you can focus more on crit multi, while your damage is being rolled 3 times and choosing the worst outcome, which is irrelevant for ailment damage. Okay, let's list off a few other strong options to utilise with this shield. There's a Spell Suppression Mastery to grant lucky chance to suppress spell damage. This is nice if your build only has a small amount of suppression chance, or in the early game before you're able to cap out the chance. Viridi's Veil is an Uber Maven exclusive unique, and it makes damage of enemies hitting you unlucky while you have a magic ring equipped, so that's going to be very strong defensively when combined with Azadi Crest. Val Grace similarly applies unlucky damage rolls to incoming suppressed spell hits, and there's also Val Arc, which grants you a buff that makes normal arc have lucky damage rolls for a duration. Then there's the Dance with Death Keystone as well, but be aware of that lucky damage for incoming critical strikes modifier. Now I want to mention at the end of this video here, and I haven't tested this, but there are lucky modifiers that are unrelated to combat. For example, the Sanctified Fossil or the new Grasp of the Past Atlas Tree notable. Does this shield affect these rolls too? I guess we'll find out sometime soon. But that's it for this one. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.